did the moon move the tide? Move vast, move deep, move wide. How did the moon move the tide? How must a cloud feel when it rains? How must a cloud feel when it rains?
Beautiful, thank you. I love the imagery of that. Isn't that a beautiful imagery? How must a cloud feel when it rains? Wow. Well, good morning, everyone, and happy Sunday. And today is actually in the Christian tradition is known as Palm Sunday, so thus the Hawaiian palm shirt. But I'm pumped, right? I was glad to have all of you here this morning. It's a treat to be with you and to share some thoughts and ideas and some awarenesses and some experiences and to learn and grow in myself. And we've been working with a work called Row, Row, Row Your Boat, a guide for living life in the divine flow. And we started off last week talking a little bit about the metaphor, the beautiful metaphor of this simple little tune, row, row, row your boat. We sang it last week. Am I going to make you sing it again this week just so you remember it? Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream. And so last week we talked about the idea that was presented here. It's a very simple and very valuable little tool to hold on to, actually. And if you can catch yourself in the middle of different circumstances and situations, and remember that little song, and listen to some of the meanings behind perhaps, or some of the representations of some of these things, and then it can help you to move past a lot of the different challenges and obstacles that we find ourselves in as we're going down the stream. So last week we talked about the idea that our boat that we're rowing in is basically our physical being. It's you, it's us, it's here in this world, and it's that part of us that's in this world. And there's two aspects, and there's a couple of different passengers in the boat, and one of the passengers in the boat is the mind. And the mind is constantly, working and doing things. And then there's also the spirit. And we have this spirit within ourselves that is also in this boat that we're rowing through life. And it's actually a very nice metaphor, I think. And we talked a little bit about the stream also. And the stream is this understanding that throughout all of our life experiences, there is a flow that is happening. If you look around and notice that all through nature, there's a flow that's happening. And it is a flow that can move us in ways and directions towards something that we had not perhaps even been aware of ourselves, but also it can move us in the direction of our own dreams and in the direction of our own desires and goals in life. And it is always at work, even though we may not be conscious and aware of it, and we have the opportunity to be a part of going in this stream, and we also have the opportunity of going perhaps either against the stream or counter to the stream, for that matter. And that's part of the wonderful divine flow itself. You see, you and I are created in the image and after the likeness of the divine. We're created and we are spiritual beings. That is an aspect of our essence and who and what we are. And we're always a part of this creative process that's going on in life. And so we can do that in a way that we are awake and aware and being more conscious about how we are participating in that stream of life. And we can also go through it like a piece of driftwood and just find ourselves being bumped off of every little rock that comes along. Can't we? You know what I'm talking about? Anybody know what I'm talking about as far as being in a piece of driftwood kind of floating around and just kind of whatever happens and not really thinking that it's just all random and seems like there's no sense to it. And you know, I've certainly had experiences and periods in my life when I just thought that was the case, that everything that happened was just happenstance and accidental, and then there was nothing you could do about it. You know, it's kind of a helpless feeling if you think about it, isn't it? And at the same time, I think there's a value in understanding that there is this flow that's going on, and that you and I have an opportunity to participate, but we don't have control, or we're not in charge of the flow. And that's actually a very freeing thing. If we allow ourselves to understand that there's a flow that is always, in some way, moving in a particular direction, and that direction is always moving toward our good. It's always moving towards some greater experience of the presence. It's always moving in some direction of upliftment of heart and mind and spirit of life. This is the idea and the understanding of what we in Unity understand to be grace in life. Grace is this understanding that through everything that goes on in our life, there is a movement of spirit that's trying to show us a way that we can experience life more richly and more fully. Jesus said, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. And I really do find that to be one of my most significant inspirational readings from Jesus. And I was thinking about, I want to read to you a little bit about this idea of Palm Sunday and the story of Palm Sunday, because I think there's some wonderful metaphor and symbolism in this as well. And it's valuable for us to look at this and recognize that it really is something that's about our unfolding as well. This is from Matthew chapter 21. And when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage to the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, Go into the village opposite you, and immediately you will find an ass tied and a colt with her, and untie them and bring them to me. And if anyone says anything to you, you shall say, The Lord has need of them, and he will send them immediately. And this took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, saying, Tell the daughter of Zion, Behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on an ass. And the disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. And they brought the ass and the colt and put their garments on them, and he sat thereon. Most of the crowd spread their garments on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went before him and that followed him shouted, Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest. And when he entered Jerusalem, all the city was stirred, saying, Who is this? And the crowd said, This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth of Galilee. This is a story that's been called the triumphal entry. And I was looking at this and thinking about it metaphysically. And Jerusalem, according to Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, Jerusalem represents a place of spiritual peace. It represents a place of awareness of the presence of God. Jerusalem is this place of where the temple is, and the temple is supposedly is the place where God lives. Well, I need you to understand that God just doesn't live in that temple. That's a symbol. If you don't get that's a symbol, then you're missing a huge piece of the understanding of Scripture. There is a temple and a place where the divine presides and resides. And I'm going to suggest to you that temple is not just in a place called Jerusalem, it's in a place called Jerusalem within yourself. There's a temple within you. There's a place within you where you can really truly tune into and experience more of that divine presence, experience more of that divine flow. You can experience more of an awareness of the presence of God in life. And it really has to do with moving into that place. And they always talk about the inner sanctum of the temple. You move into your own inner sanctum. There's a place within you where you are able to really attune yourself and align yourself more with this divine principle of spirit. And you move into a place of experiencing peace on a deeper level. And so Jesus is really giving, in this story, there is an example of one moving into a place of more deep peace. Goes on to say that it is go into the temple. And as he goes into the temple, he drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. And he said to them, "It is written, my house shall be called a house of prayer, but you've made it into a den of robbers." And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And I want to kind of get back to this work. Being in that divine flow. What does it mean to be in that divine flow? And how can we really allow ourselves to move into that energy and that awareness in a more conscious way? Well, he gives a great example here of, we talked about the boat and we talked about the stream being that divine flow in life. Well, let's sing this other part. Row, row, row your boat. What is rowing? What does it have to do with any of this? Well, the reality is that rowing is a symbol for our ability to navigate through this stream of life, and it represents our divine will, that we have an ability to make choices. We have an ability to choose. We have an ability to decide. We have an ability to say yes to and no to different experiences in our lives. And so the rowing is really an exercise and a way for us to really experience being in that flow in a conscious way. We can make choices that move us in alignment with this divine flow and energy, or we can make choices that are actually giving us a bit more of a challenge, or we can simply let go and drift and bump into all the rocks and go through all of the falls haphazardly as we go through life experiences. I remember an experience I had some years ago. I was very avid canoeist, and I did a lot of whitewater canoeing back in my earlier days and 20s, and I was, I just loved that work. And I did that a lot recreationally when I was in college and even after for many years. And I haven't done it in a while, and I hadn't done it in a while, and I wound up getting invited to go on a canoeing trip with a group of people. And my first wife and my oldest son were with me, and he was about 8 or 9, I think, at the time, perhaps. And so we're in the canoe. There's the three of us, and I'm in the, and it's a group of people who had never floated on a river before, and the river was at flood stage, or just barely underneath it. And this is the Buffalo River, which is a pretty intense river. Actually, no, this one was the Spring. I forgot which one it was, but this was the Spring River. And Spring River can be kind of challenging, but it's not necessarily the most challenging. And so I was the only one there that had any experience in canoeing on a river. And so I was actually showing there was guides there, of course, and they certainly had the experience, but I was also helping to show some folks how to do this, and I was, wanted to make sure everybody was safe and everything. That tends to be I'm kind of the shepherd kind of thing, looking out for people the best I can,
Amen for that.
Anyway, so part of my personality. So we're floating along, and everybody's doing pretty well. They're all having a good time. We're all having a good time, and we reach a place, and we've hit a few rapids, and we went over them very nicely. And we went to a nice, calm pool. And in this nice, calm pool, Kathy and I were actually decided we were tired and we were going to rest. So we decided to kick back a little bit, and so we closed our eyes, and we said, Michael, my stepson, was in the middle of the boat, and he wanted to know if he could paddle. And I said, well, okay, here, you can take my paddle. You paddle for a while, but if you happen to if we come up on some rapids, you let me know, and and so that I can steer us through the rapids. So we're floating along. Things are going pretty nice, and I'm just enjoying the sunshine. It's a beautiful day. It's a great time. We're floating down this river, and I hear Michael say, Dad, we're coming to some rapids. And I go, oh, okay. So I get up, and the rapids are about from here to Teresa. And we're sideways going down the rapids. So I grabbed the paddle real quick, but it was too late. We went right over these, it really is a small waterfall, went right over this waterfall and wrapped the canoe around a tree. Only time I've ever wrapped a canoe around a tree. And it was not going to get moved. And so we wound up having to ride the rest of the way with all these other inexperienced canoeists. So, sometimes I tell that story because, I was in a situation where I was doing great and flowing along with the river and was able to guide and make choices. But I closed my eyes and I went to sleep. You ever had that kind of experience? You know the metaphor I'm talking about? We're going along and we're making good choices. We're maneuvering in life, but we decide that, we don't need to do that. We can just drift. Well, sometimes we can just drift, but sometimes we need to be a participant in this creative flow. In fact, we need to be a participant a good bit of the time, but we need to be conscious and aware of our choices that we're making and make choices that are going to move us in a direction that are not going to necessarily wind us up wrapping around a tree. And if we do wrap it around a tree, of course, we'll have to try it again and do it a different way, right? Because we do have those kind of experiences as well. So I tell that story because I just think it's really a good example of using our will to make choices and to decide how we're going to move through experiences in life. And one of the ways he's got 5 questions here that I want to throw out for you that I think will be valuable in helping us to get an awareness of how we are moving in the flow and how the flow is working in our lives and how we're able to be a part of this flow. So one of the first questions he asks is, do you really want to go where you say you do? So I'm going to ask you to sit with that question a second. Think about different goals that you have in your life, the plans that you've made, the things that you'd like to experience more of, and just ask yourself the question, do I really want to go where I say I do? And part of the reason for asking this question, and it's valuable, I think, to listen, because oftentimes we have an intention, we set a goal for ourselves, we set an intention that we want in life, we have a good that we have in mind that we'd like to experience, but there's also all of this debris and baggage and stuff that comes up that says, you can't do that. Well, what's the use? What's the point? Or what are some other things that come up that might come up in opposition to where you would like to be? I call those our yeah buts. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I'd really like to do that, but, yeah, but. So we all have those. We all have them. They're part of our, interestingly enough, they are a part of our, you might say a part of our defense mechanisms. They think they're there to keep us safe. There's a part of our subconscious mind that's there to try and keep us from being disappointed or being hurt or other experiences that we think we don't want to have. But the reality is, they are oftentimes the very thing that keep us from experiencing our good, and they don't necessarily protect us. They basically oftentimes keep us from experiencing the possibilities that are there for us in life. And so part of our work is to learn how to get our oars rowing in the same direction together. It's kind of like you're rowing along in life and you got one oar going all full guns in the direction that you want life to go, and then you've got the other one going, wait a minute, and what are you going to do? You go round and round in a circle. Anybody ever been going around in a circle? Felt yourself going through the same experiences over and over again, getting the same results over and over again? You know what they call that, of course, don't you? You keep trying to do the same thing over and over again and thinking there's going to be some kind of different result. That's the definition of insanity, isn't it? Sorry, I resemble that remark. It is. I mean, it's just what we do sometimes. And it is a human thing, and it's okay. It's not a bad thing, but it's not necessarily helping us to flow in the direction of our highest good. Well, I want to get back to the story of Jesus here, coming into Jerusalem and the symbolism of moving into Jerusalem. And some beautiful symbolism here because he's coming in as, it's really quite beautiful because he's coming in just like in Roman times when a general or a ruler of some kind came back from a campaign. They would ride into the city and they would ride in usually on a big horse, a big steed, and it was a triumphal entry. And people would come along and they would throw palm leaves or leaves and branches off of the trees in honor of this great ruler and leader. And so it was a symbol of victory. It was a symbol of what's the word I'm looking for? Of not conquest, yes. It was a symbol of conquest. It was a symbol of being of great power and honor and not being fearful. And you follow what I'm saying? But the interesting symbolism of this is that he came in riding on a donkey. Now, the donkey actually represents humility. And so he came into this, and that was a symbol, even in Roman times, when someone came riding in on a giant steed, they were the warriors and the conquerors. But if they came in riding on a donkey, they came in to bring peace. And that was a well-known symbol back in the Roman times. I wasn't aware of this until I did some more research on this, and it's really fascinating to me that Jesus was a symbol of that Christ Spirit coming into a place of peace, bringing even more of an awareness of the idea of peace. And that humility that he's bringing to this is really a way for us to understand that there is a flow that can happen here, but a choice also has to be made. And the big choice, of course, was, do we even bother to go into this city there where we know that there are those? I mean, think about Jesus. He knew that the scribes and the Pharisees were actually looking out to do harm to him. And yet he came in without fear. And he came in with humility. And he came in, I think, for a divine purpose. Now, there are those who say, well, he came in there just to be crucified. I don't buy that. I do not believe that the whole thing about Jesus was he was crucified, dead, and buried. I think he was trying to show us that he was more than what he was trying to show us that we are each more than we think we are. See, you and I are spiritual beings. We're created in the image after the likeness of the divine. And that image of Jesus, the Christ, is an awareness of that Christ nature that exists within each and every one of us. It's there within every one of us, and it's there to show us how we can overcome our fears, our anxieties, the challenges that we face in life, the problems that we're facing, how we can move into those experiences in ways that are allowing us to experience life from a different perspective. Now, sometimes when we come into those experiences, we kind of feel like we're being crucified, don't we? Anybody know what I'm talking about? We kind of feel like, uh-oh, this is going to be a problem. This is going to be a challenge. And we feel like we're going to lose a part of ourselves. We feel like we're dying in some ways, perhaps. There's a symbolism in that as well. And that is a part of us learning to let go of that ego consciousness that says, I have to be in charge here, I have to be in control, or, you follow me? That humility is one of the things that teaches us how we can go through those experiences and not necessarily have to be in control of what's going on out here, but that we do have a choice that we can make and that we are making, and we have the opportunity to make. So where do you really want to go? Do you really want to go where you say you want to go? Listen and notice if there are things that come up for you that are kind of getting in the way of that. And part of the shift is learning how to pay attention and notice that you have another voice that's trying to maybe take you in a different direction You got another paddle rowing in a different way, and see if you can realign your own thinking and feeling so that you are moving in the direction that you want to go. So the second question, as you're going down the stream of life, are you paying attention to what's going on around you? Thank you, Steve. Steve was, obviously, thank you. Are you paying attention to what's going on around you? And one of the things he says one of my all-time favorite sayings is, there's God, and then there's not paying attention. There's God, and then there's not paying attention. And he says, there's never a time when God is not trying to point you in the direction of your greater good. God is always in and always showing you the next right step to take. And so God communicates in ways that we oftentimes are not listening to. See, the God channel is always broadcasting, it's always on, but we're not always tuned into it, right? Yep. Our frequency sometimes is a little off. We're actually over on, we're listening to KUT, and we need to be listening to GOD, maybe. Sometimes we're listening to the TV and the news. We're listening to the broadcasters rather than listening to that internal voice of spirit within us that's really showing us and telling us what we can do, our next steps, where we can go to really experience more of that flow and be a part of the good in our lives. So are you paying attention to what's going on around you? You get messages and experiences all the time. We get little subtle things. Sometimes they're little tokens. Sometimes they are totems. You know, even the Native American tradition, they will go out on a spiritual quest to try and get some awareness, some guidance, and they will find different things in nature, like feathers or a tree, and it'll mean something significant to them, and there'll be a message in it for them, and they'll listen for what that might be like. And so sometimes we find that the messages that we are being shared and given are right in front of us, usually oftentimes from the people that we're closest to. They're giving us opportunities and ways of learning how we can experience more the truth of our nature, sometimes by overcoming all of our stuff about them, right? Or sometimes it's really helping us to understand that what is being brought up here is being brought up for an experience of healing in this experience. And sometimes it's just simply a gentle, kind, loving word or a smile. Sometimes it's a pat on the back. And sometimes it's an in your face, right? So oftentimes we need to pay attention as we're a part of this divine flow to what's going on around us in life. And then the next question that he gives us, which I think is really valuable, is, are you willing to, oops, I missed one. Let me back up. I like this one. Are you paying attention to what's going on within you? Are you paying attention to what's going on within you? Are you noticing the energies and the feelings that are coming up in you, the experiences, the little inner voice, that still small voice that we talk about, that's always speaking to us in some form, in some way? It's not always, we don't always necessarily hear it as a voice, although sometimes we do. Sometimes it's just a nudge and a feeling and a knowing. And we only are able to know that and experience that by being present to it, by being in the present moment. One of a great saying I love is, Julie was sharing with me a book called Boys in the Boat. Anybody here read that book? It's about a crewing team from the University of Washington. And University of Washington, this is back in the 30s, and it was back at one of the, I think it was the 1939 Olympics. And they actually wound up going to Germany to the 1939 Olympics, and it was right in the height of Nazi Germany and Hitler and that whole thing. And they were from all different backgrounds, from all over, actually not only just the Northwest, but I think from all over the country. And they won the Olympics that year. And it was just a historic kind of thing, and it was a really interesting story about all their stories about how all that came about and the work that they did and the challenges they faced and the struggles that they had, not only getting there, but going through that experience of being there and not being very welcomed, to be honest, but they wound up going through this and winning the gold medal in crewing, rowing. And the primary phrase that their coach kept giving them over and over and over again is this: mind in boat. Let me say that again because it's a great little phrase, and if you can just remember that one little phrase, I think it'll really help you to move out of a lot of the stuff that goes on in life. Mind in boat. Say that with me. Mind in boat. What do you think he was talking about? And when you're on a crewing team, you've got to be right in sync with everybody else on that team, can't you? Don't you? And you've got to be right in sync with all of the movements and all the rowing. You've got to be right in sync with everything. It's got to be flowing. Otherwise, you're going to do what we talked about earlier. You're going to be spinning around in circles. You're going to be pulled this way. You're going to be pulled that way. And if you're not present to being in that boat and in that alignment and in that row and in that stream of consciousness, if you're looking at the birds that are flying over, or if a good-looking young guy or a good-looking young girl comes along and you're off over here, you're going to be rowing in the direction that your mind is focused. Do you realize that? And so the idea of mind and boat is really about being present here and now in this moment of what's going on in your life and listening to that inner awareness, that inner still small voice. And as you're walking through your day, really paying attention and being present to that and listening to what's going on as you're going through your work day and noticing the things that come up for you, and notice the little awarenesses that come to you and little insights that come to you, the little ahas that come in life. They're all there, and they're there to help guide you along on a way that you can experience even more of this idea of peace and blessings in life. It's those gut feelings of not so much of fear, because it's really more a gut feeling of, yes, this is right. This is the way to go. This is my move or my step right now in this moment. And then the fourth question that I really think is valuable for you: are you willing to let go of what you think you know? Are you willing to let go of what you think you know? One of the most challenging obstacles that we face, I think, in being a part of the divine flow is this little phenomena of, okay, God, I got it now. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, I've got it all figured out now. We're going to, Sometimes what we think we know is the very thing that gets in the way of our good. Sometimes we set an intention for something and we become very attached to having it go exactly the way we think it's supposed to go, don't we? But there's an awareness that we need to tune into and recognize that we move into the direction that we want to go, and it's a way of guiding us in our lives. But if we become attached to that, it's kind of like trying to throw an anchor out in front of us, thinking that somehow that's going to get us there. But really what it does is eventually it drags and holds us back, doesn't it? I love the imagery of this rowing and the water. It speaks so much to the spiritual path and the spiritual life. And so ask yourself the question, am I willing to let go of what I think is the highest and best for me, to be open to something even better, to be open to a greater possibility of good? If you are like most people, he says, chances are that you've been raised to be fairly self-reliant. There's only one problem with that. The self that you are relying on is unreliable. Some of you are laughing. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Yeah. So why? Because what you experience as yourself is primarily your mind. And your mind is full of facts that are little more than false assumptions and half-truths that are based on information that is incomplete at best. I want to get back to our story of Jesus, switching over here. You know, he goes into the temple and he sees that people are selling all kinds of things in the temple, and he goes in and he cleans out the temple. He cleans out the temple, and that's a symbol of us cleaning out our awareness also. It's a symbol of us cleaning out our own thinking and belief systems, of a belief system that is an even exchange. It is a belief system of, how should I say it? It's a belief system that there's something that we do out here that is really responsible for our good in life. When really what we're doing is clearing out those belief systems where we are connected to or dependent on, I guess you might say, outer circumstances for our good. Does that make sense? We get really attached to things being the way that we think they're supposed to be. We get really attached to the world being the way we think it's supposed to be. And when we get attached that way, we are actually letting that be the source of our good rather than that inner knowing of a spirit that's always at work to make things, move things in a loving and positive way in our lives. So that's a great question to ask. Am I willing to let go of what I think is supposed to be in order to experience an even greater experience of blessings in my life? And then the fifth question, I like this one. Do you know what effortless even feels like? Do you know what effortless even feels like? He says, rowing with the flow is a virtually effortless, but you will never know if you are in the flow if you don't have a very good feel for what effortlessness is. So were you told as a child that life is supposed to be easy? How many of you were told that? What? One. I'm glad we have at least one that was told life is supposed to be easy. What were you told?
Life is hard.
Life is hard.
Mama says every day like this.
Yeah. What if none of that's true? And we bought it. What if none of that is true? What if life is not supposed to be hard? What if life is really supposed to be easy? How would we know? He says, were you told as a child that life is supposed to be easy, or were you told that life is inescapably hard? Were you told that the universe is at your service, ready to fulfill your every heart's desire? How many of you were told that as you were growing up? Or were you told that you have to struggle for what you want and fight to hold on to what you want? Sound familiar? There's a phrase that I learned in ministry a few years after I was in. It took me a while to really to get this. And the phrase is this, and I'm going to share this with you because it's one of my big lessons, and I'm still learning. Don't push the river. Let me say that again. In fact, let's say that with me. Don't push the river. Don't push the river. How many times we find ourselves trying to hold the river back, trying to go upstream, trying to go and keep the river from flowing in a particular direction, or trying to stand even in place sometimes when things need to be flowing down. So these are some of the awarenesses and some questions that you can ask yourself to see, are you moving gently down the stream? If you find yourself trying to push the river, or if you find yourself struggling against, even when you're rowing, struggling against things, maybe you need to listen to this song again and flow gently down the stream. Gently down the stream. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit about gently down the stream. Hope you'll come back and be with us next week. Let's move into our meditation time. We're going to have a song, and then we'll have our meditation.
Let's move into a comfortable place. Just allow yourself to breathe into the heart space. Feel yourself being present here and now.
in boat, being present to right now, and turning into that place within you of stillness, of quiet, of peace. And as you breathe into that place of peace, let your heart and mind be open to the wisdom, the inspiration, and guidance of Spirit. Be conscious and aware of a call of divine desire, some way or some experience that you're being called to, a feeling of blessing, a healing of a relationship, or perhaps a healing of the physical body. Perhaps it's a goal that you've set for yourself, personally or even in work. Perhaps it's just simply experiencing more of the presence. And feel the openness to allowing Spirit to speak to you. Allowing that still small voice to give you awareness and guidance of how and when to row, how and where, and you can align your thoughts and your feelings, moving them together to help move you in the direction of your dreams and your higher good. Feeling that flow moving you gently and participating in that gentle flow. And moving with it. Take now another nice deep breath. And as you breathe into the heart space, feel that openness, that willingness to allow this stream to move you and to guide you in how best to row with it through your life. Take another nice deep breath. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. Be present here and now. And so it is.